Assalamu alaikum. Hello everyone. My name is Rilwan and I'm one of the facilitator of this course GST 212 Philosophy, Logic and Human Existence. And I'll be particularly talking on giving a talk on module 7 laws of thought and nature of argument. The course actually comprises of topics like laws of thought, where we'll be looking at laws on an identity law, non-contradiction law, excluded middle law, and we'll also be looking at meaning of argument, the classification, its classification, and particularly we also focus on cogent argument per se, refuting argument, and also repairing of our arguments. And lastly, we'll be looking at, we'll give a talk on fallacies as well. Now, to begin with, introduction. Logic, as we all know, is nothing much, but we use it. It's a word we use in our daily activities. But logic is simply a systematic study of correct reasoning. And this module is actually going to introduce you to the fundamental laws of thought and explains also the nature of arguments. We're also, and the essence is also to enable students distinguish good reasoning from bad reasoning, construct clear arguments, and identify common errors in thinking, that is, fallacies. Okay. Now, when they say laws of thought, let's even look at thought in particular. In logic, a thought refers to a proposition or statement that can either be true or false. The laws that govern this thought enable one to ensure that this statement or thought are handled consistently and without contradiction. These laws provide basic framework for clear thinking, valid argument, and sound conclusions. There are three basic laws of thought, namely law of identity, law of non-contradiction, and law of excluded middle. These laws actually originated in classical Greek philosophy, particularly in the work of Aristotle, one of the Greek philosophers, who actually and these laws remain central to logic, mathematics, and philosophical reasoning. Contradiction and law of which is actually what law of contradiction is saying. So I think this is clear about the laws of thought. So we are going to just look at these three basic law of thought, and then we'll look at the next item, the next topic, which is nature of argument actually. And talking about argument, an argument is just a collection of statements whereby one of the statement, which is the conclusion, is claimed to follow logically from other statements, which we call the premises. That is, one statement follows from logically from another set of a statement, actually. So, whenever we have such kind of argument statement, whereby we have this kind of scenarios, we refer to such kind of collection as an argument. Okay, so we are going to look at the structure of an argument. Normally, every argument has these properties. It has premises, it has turnstiles, and it has conclusion. This premise can be one or more. The turnstile is just simply one, which is the premises is also called it's a statement actually, which is the reason or evidence. And the turnstile is the word that combines both the premises and the conclusion, which is usually therefore, so, hence, etc. And the conclusion is what the premises support actually. So if the conclusion follows from the conclusion follows from the premises actually. So that is what there's basic fact features to look at whenever you are trying to identify an argument is these three basic things: the premises, the turnstile, and the conclusion. And a good example, we have some following examples of arguments. For example, an argument says that all human are mortal. Socrates is a human, therefore Socrates is mortal. So you can see that we have about three collection of statements here. The first two statements here are the premises, because they are what, with these two statements, the conclusion, which is the third statement, follows from these two conclusions, because it says all human are mortal and Socrates is a human, so therefore Socrates is mortal. So you see, if these two the last statement here actually follows from these two statements. So we call these first two statements the premises, and the turnstile, which is the therefore, and then lastly the conclusion, which is Socrates is mortal. Look at example 2 also. It says all even numbers are divisible by 2. 10 is an even number, therefore 10 is divisible by 2. So you see, we have two statements from the beginning, and the last one, which is the conclusion, follows logically from the second and first and second statement. So we have several examples to give an argument. Okay, let me take the last one, which says all squares have four sides. This figure, but depending on the figure the arguer is trying to is pointing at, this figure is a square, therefore it has four sides. So we have again uh, uh, two statements that actually serve as the premises, while the third one comes from the two statement, which is the conclusion actually. So, and note that there are cases where we can have at least even one premise, not necessarily two. We can have three, four, or more premises, then one conclusion. So as we go further, you see something like that, or the argument that comes in that manner. So no one is restricting premises to be just one or two. Actually, it can be one, but at least there should be one. It should be one of them. um this the next slide here is talking about is giving a schematic diagram of the classification of argument. Actually, argument will be classified into two parts, namely deductive and inductive argument. Then this inductive argument can be evaluated using the following terminologies. We can say a deductive argument is valid or invalid. You can say that argument is sound or unsound, and we can also refer to inductive argument to be strong and weak or weak, and we can also refer to inductive argument to be cogent or uncogent. So these are methods of evaluating argument. Then why do we need to actually evaluate an argument? It's because every argument comes with two claims: the factual claim and the also, look at number 4. All crimes are violation of the law. Theft is a crime. Hence, theft is a violation of the law. So you can see that this conclusion here, that theft is a violation of the law, follows from strictly from the fact that all crimes are violation of law and theft is an example of a crime. So you can see that this conclusion follows with strict necessity. But if it's such that the conclusion doesn't follow with strict necessity, argument here, a deductive argument where the conclusion follows with strict necessity from the premises, and if otherwise, then it's sound and unsound, strong inductive argument. So these are examples of cogent argument per se. Let me skip to the last one, which says the bridge was inspected and certified to be safe. Therefore, it can be used safely. True. So it has been tested, inspected, sorry, and be certified to be what do you call it, to be safe. So therefore, it follows probably that it can be used safely. So definitely, we have a cogent argument here. So I think with this example, we further explain what we mean by a cogent argument per se. All right, we'll leave there for more explanation. We'll attach a lecture a material to be attached, a lecture note, I say, for more examples, more explanations to this video. But then this is actually what cogent argument is really all about. Then next we'll look at, as listed earlier, that we'll be looking at refuting argument or a counter argument. From the word refute an argument, when you refute an argument, when you to refute an argument is simply to show that such argument is weak or invalid or is based on a false premises. So if you are given an argument, if you're asked to refute an argument, you're asked to establish that such argument is weak. You have to come up with a reason or to find a counter example to make that argument to refute the argument. And what do you need to do? What are the methods of refutation? You show that the premises are false, if it's more than one. You show that the reasoning is invalid, or you provide a counter example. Either ways, you can use either of these depending on the nature of the argument here. So if you look at this example now, let's see. You will give an argument is given and the refutation is what given. And it should be noted that there are various ways you can refute an argument. Not necessarily one way. Two or more ways can be used to refute an argument. Look at this example here. It says all birds can fly. Okay, this is an argument. All birds can fly. How can you refute or counter this argument? See, the best way to counter this argument is it true that all birds can fly? So it's up. So one need to start thinking all the possible birds. Can they fly? Penguins are birds but cannot fly. So that is not true. So you have proved the premises of this to be false. You have rendered the reasoning is invalid since you have gotten a counter example. Not only penguin, even a kiwi is a bird that also cannot even fly. Also, there are several examples there. So we can see that um, when you ask to refute an argument, look at example 2. It said this student failed because he is lazy. This student failed the exam because he's lazy. How do you refute these exams? You say, okay, he studied hard but was ill during the exams. So definitely, you see this what you are doing here. You are just trying to what do you say? They are trying to provide a count, not the counter example. Here we are trying to show that the reasoning is invalid. The reasoning, the fact that you say fail doesn't mean that he's lazy. There could be better reason for that. If you want to actually show that the reasoning is invalid, this case here is trying to show that reasoning is invalid, not a false premise. He studied hard, but was ill during the exam. So that's the reason for it. So you have found a premises that we have found a reasoning, we show that the reasoning is invalid in this case here. So this is, you refute an argument here. If you say student fail because he's lazy, how do you refute this? Look at the third one, for example. If it is hot, then it must be sunny. So if this argument, the person that poses argument claims that if it is hot, if the weather is hot, then it must be sunny. Well, it can be hot and cloudy at the same time. Here you are showing that the premises is what? False. Actually, if it's hot, then it's sunny. So it can be hot and cloudy at the same time. So this is another way to refute such an argument. Online learning is ineffective. How do you refute such kind of argument? Online learning is ineffective. Many students perform well through online learning. So this one is counter example. Many students perform well through online learning. Here, the arguer is claiming that online learning is not effective. And now you claim that of course there are many people who are perform well with online learning. Rich people are always happy. Rich people are always happy. How do we refute this? Using one of the methods here. Wealth does not guarantee happiness. It's not always true that money is happiness or wealth is happiness. So this is a counter example actually. So whenever you are asked to refute an argument, you should know how to find a word that actually counter the argument. So it's simply put, to refute an argument is just to counter an argument, to find a better way to counter such argument. That is also a reasonable, that also should be reasonable Now we'll just look at fallacy. What is a fallacy? What is a fallacy? Actually, an argument that seems correct but false upon a very close examination is referred to as a fallacy. Deductive argument and inductive argument actually may contain fallacies, and these fallacies can be classified as formal or informal. What do you mean by formal fallacy? Formal fallacy are fallacies that involves violation of certain rules of valid inference, while informal involves errors created in the reasoning in order to trick an unsuspecting audience. Here we are more interested in informal fallacy because it's an error that's committed in our day-to-day activities. So we just look at the classification of this, and it's classified into formal and informal. Then the informal is further subclassified into fallacies of relevance, ambiguity, and presumption. Now, relevance actually is the kind of fallacy that involves the use of emotional appeals, where there's appeal to force, appeal to pity, appeal to authority, appeal to ignorance. We have defined all this. We have given examples and definition of all this in the materials, but then we'll just look at the some example here. For example, appeal to force. This is a way of argument whereby an arguer tries to be violent to the second or the third second party by making the first by subjecting the first party to accept the truth under a threat or something. So that is, we classify such kind of argument as appeal to force because he's toying or playing with someone's emotion here. For example, I came here and if I pose an argument to you in this manner, it should be classified as a kind of fallacy of relevance that falls under appeal to force. For example, if I said, let me put it this way, um, Nigeria is not a West African country, and if you don't accept this, I will punish you, or I will make sure I beat you to pop. Something like this. So definitely, Nigeria is not a West African country, which of course we all know this is not true. Nigeria is a West African country. So, but then even though you know that it's not true, you'll be forced to accept this because you are being threatened here. Okay, so this is a good example. Okay, now let's look at the appeal to pity. This is a case where the arguer tries to to gain your sympathy by coming up with some with some excuse to justify his or her actions. For example, if this happened in, for example, a student comes to a lecture late and or he feel like he missed a particular test or a CA test, and you come to he approached you. Okay, sir, I missed this exam because my mom was not feeling well, and I woke up early. My mom was not feeling well. I really want to take care of her. So before I come around for the test, I already missed the test, and I don't know if there's, so that was why I missed the test. So you see, this person is trying to justify his action with your mom being sick. You're not the doctor here. You're not the one to attend to your mom here. So there could be other reasons actually, even a student. So what he's trying to say, by the time you say your mom is sick, everyone, once you hear about mother like this, you will be touched and you may want to, okay, it's all right since your mom was sick. Some even go as far as saying they lost their uncle, their dad died and all. So this, if once someone tries to gain your acceptance, or he's trying to make you accept his proposition or his proposition by making use by trying to get your sympathy, then you classify such kind of fallacies as appeal to pity. There are so many interesting examples you see in the material, even that of authority, ignorance, and ambiguity, where some things are not clear, but we try to make it clearer by making use of equivocation, composition, and division, as you are going to see in the material. Like I said, there's also what we call the fallacy of presumption, where we call fallacy of accident, false cause, and begging the question, sorry, and also that of a complex. So we are going to look at some common fallacies that we, just because of the time limited given to these lectures, we'll look at just some common fallacies that we, and their examples. There's one of the fallacies that we know we refer to as ad hominem, that is the argument against the person, fallacy against the person, which actually means attacking the person instead of the argument. This is where someone tries to attack the person instead of the argument. Someone puts an argument and you're trying to render or find the fault in the argument, but rather than coming out to find the fault in the argument, you rather attack the person instead of the argument. So doing, we refer to such kind of fallacy as fallacy against the person, or ad hominem. There's also the hasty generalization, which involves drawing a conclusion from insufficient evidence. There's also appeal to authority. Under those appeal we mentioned in the tree, which involves relying on an unqualified authority. There's also that of fallacy that is under fallacy of relevance, where you see fallacy of false cause, which involve assuming causation without proof. Then lastly, the bandwagon fallacies, which is believing something because people believe it. You classify such kind of fallacy as a bandwagon, or identify such kind of fallacy as a bandwagon fallacy. That is believing something because many people believe in that. Now look at this example. It says everyone is using this textbook, so it must be the best. Everyone is using this textbook, so it must be the best. Does the fact that everyone uses makes it the best? Actually, this is a fallacy, actually. But then what kind of fallacy is this? Because the question is to identify the fallacy. Of course, if you look at the definition we stated at the top here, it falls within the definition of a bandwagon fallacy, because you say everyone here is saying that the textbook is because we're using it, it doesn't mean that it's the best. So now let's look at this again. He is wrong because he failed the course last year. He is wrong because he failed the course last year. What do you notice here? This is a kind of fallacy that involves attacking the person. Because someone he failed the course last year doesn't mean he cannot, or whatever he's saying is wrong. So we identify this kind of fallacy as a good example of fallacy committed under ad hominem. So that is what this kind of fallacy falls under. Then also look at I passed the exam after drinking coffee. Therefore, coffee caused my post success. How does drinking a coffee guarantee the success or one success of in an examination? Has it been checked? Has it been proven to be true? Of course, it's not true. So this passage is relying on what we call it false cause. Look at false cause. It's assuming a causation without a proof. There's no proof that shows that the coffee is the reason for his success, his or her success. So this is a fallacy that's committed and classified under false cause fallacy. A politician says this theorem is correct. An example of another argument. A politician says this theorem is correct, so it must be true. This is classified under appeal to authority because it says that by definition here, you are relying on a particular fact based on the fact that an unqualified authority, based on the person and authority, says it. How big that a politician says this theorem is correct, and you say it must be true that this theorem is correct. What concerns a politician who is not a researcher and comes up with this fact? So you see, this is another fallacy that is committed and classified under appeal to authority. Then lastly, most students say this course is easy, so it must be easy. Most students say this course is easy, so it must be easy. If you look at the definition of bandwagon fallacy, this is a good example of a bandwagon fallacy here. So that is actually classified as a bandwagon fallacy. So there are several examples and definitions in the textbook, like I said, and I will implore you to go through them, ask your questions. Let me know when you have any problem. I'll always be there to respond. Thank you, and thank you for your time.